Hey everyone, today we are going to go over the endocrine system with you. And for those of you who don't know what the endocrine system is, that is a system within your body that is responsible for releasing certain hormones within the bloodstream, that these hormones connect and get picked up by the cells from which they need. And before I get into all that, I'll go ahead and read it to you and explain it on the way. Okay, so the endocrine system. The endocrine system is a system of glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream to regulate a variety of bodily functions, including the control of mood, growth and development, tissue function, and metabolism. The endocrine system consists of host organs, known as glands, chemical messengers or hormones, and target receptor cells. So host organs are the glands. The chemical messengers are your hormones, so the glands release these chemical messengers into the bloodstream, and that they target your cells, which the cells are the receptors. Okay, so once a hormone is secreted from a gland, it travels through the bloodstream to target cells designed to receive its message. The target cells have the hormone-specific receptors, ensuring that each hormone will communicate only with the specific target cell. So you have lots and lots of hormones traveling through your bloodstream, but they are only picked up by certain cells that need it specifically. The endocrine system is responsible for regulating multiple bodily functions to stabilize the body's internal environment, much like a thermostat regulates the temperature in a room. The term endocrine literally means hormone secreting. Hormones produced by the endocrine system virtually affect all forms of human function, including, but not limited to, triggering muscle contraction, stimulating protein and fat synthesis, activating enzyme systems, regulating growth and metabolism, and determining how the body will physically and emotionally respond to stress. So your body is essentially nothing but chemical reactions, all secreted by the endocrine system. All of your hormones, they're responsible for, muscle growth, muscle contraction, what your cells are, the type of foods that your cells are taking in from what you are feeding it, to determine the type of growth that it's going to need. And yeah, it's amazing. Let's say, for example, if you have a really long day at work and you come home and you're just you feel stressed out, and that is the only reason why you're feeling stressed is because your cortisol levels are rising. Cortisol is basically the stress hormone. That's the hormone that is breaking down the system. Okay, so the endocrine glands. What's up, buddy? It's my nephew. The primary endocrine glands are the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, and adrenal glands. The pituitary gland is often referred to as the master gland of the endocrine system because it controls the functions of the other endocrine glands. Now here's a picture of the glands within the body. Here's the pituitary. Now the pituitary has three parts, as a frontal lobe, a medial lobe, and also a posterior lobe. Then here's the thyroid, which is located in the throat. Then you have your adrenals. Okay. Then your stomach. The pancreas, the one right here under the stomach. Your ovaries for the women, and then the testes for the men. And there's also the pineal gland that is in here as well, but the pineal gland has nothing to do with secreting certain hormones within the body. Its function is something totally different. And for those of you who are very spiritual, you may have an idea of what the pineal gland is for. So, leaving that on a different subject, we're focusing completely on our physical being. So, the pituitary gland. The pituitary has three different sections or lobes: the anterior, the intermediate, and posterior lobes. Now remember, anterior is the front lobe, the intermediate is the middle, the medial, then the posterior is the back part. And each lobe secretes specific types of hormones. The anterior lobe secretes growth hormone, prolactin, to stimulate milk production after giving birth. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, to stimulate the adrenal glands. Thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, to stimulate the thyroid gland. Remember, the thyroid is here in the throat. Okay, the adrenal glands were right next to the stomach, right on the sides of the stomach. Okay, and then follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, to stimulate the ovaries or the testes, and luteinizing hormone, or LH, to stimulate the ovaries or testes as well. The intermediate lobe of the pituitary gland, now remember this is the middle, secretes melanocyte stimulating hormone, or to control skin pigmentation. For those of you who don't know what skin pigmentation is, that's basically determining how light or dark your skin will be. And the posterior lobe secretes antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, to increase absorption of water into the blood by the kidneys, and oxytocin, to contract the uterus during childbirth and stimulate milk production. The thyroid gland produces hormones that regulate the rate of metabolism and affect the growth and rate of function of many other systems in the body. Adrenal glands secrete hormones such as corticosteroids and catecholamines, including cortisol and adrenaline, or epinephrine, in response to stress. So, the pituitary gland, being the master gland, it releases specific hormones that trigger the other main hormonal points in the body, to which in turn cause them to release specific hormones within the bloodstream. It's amazing. It's very amazing. Much of the control of the hormonal activity ultimately rests with the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, which are located in the brain. Together, they represent an important link between the nervous and endocrine system. As stated earlier, many of the hormones produced in this region directly influence the activities of the other glands. Thus, the pituitary gland is often referred to as the master gland. However, for the purpose of this chapter, we will focus on those glands and hormones directly involved in exercise activity. Okay, so I will go ahead and read to you insulin, glucagon, and control of blood glucose. And I will end it at that with this video. In the next one, we will go over the adrenal, pituitary, reproductive, and the thyroid hormones. So, insulin, glucagon, and the control of blood glucose. And for those of you who have hypertension, high blood pressure, you have diabetes, a lot of chronic conditions are only the result of not exercising and not eating right, because your body has all this stored stuff within itself that you're not releasing. You're not allowing it to release because you're not allowing your body to exercise and to heal itself. So, insulin, glucagon, and the control of blood glucose. Carbohydrate, specifically glucose, is the primary energy source during vigorous exercise. Now, glucose is a sugar, simple sugar. Carbohydrates are the human body's key source of energy, and glucose is the principal fuel for the brain. Any extreme fluctuations in blood glucose levels can be extremely dangerous. Too little can inhibit performance, whereas too much can damage the vascular system. And for those of you who don't know what the vascular system is, that's basically the system of your veins, your arteries and your veins. Okay. Control of blood glucose is regulated by the pancreas, which produces two specific hormones, insulin and glucagon. Now remember, the pancreas is the one located right under the stomach. It is the pancreas. The pancreas has specific receptor cells on them. I can't remember the exact name, but they have these sensory receptors that are on the pancreas are basically what regulate how much blood sugar, or how much sugar is inside of your bloodstream. And if there's too much, the pancreas will release insulin. And insulin gets released into the bloodstream, and it helps the cells to take in glucose for energy production, so the cells could work properly. And then if you have too little, if these sensory receptors are sensing too little sugar in your blood level, then they start to release what is called glucagon, which is a stored glycogen inside of the body, so that your sugar levels within the blood rise, so your cells will be able to have the specific or adequate amounts of sugar and energy to work properly within the body. Okay? Control of blood glucose is regulated by the pancreas, which produces two specific hormones, insulin and glucagon. Insulin helps regulate energy and glucose metabolism in the body. After consuming a meal, glucose enters the blood at the small intestine, causing a rise in blood glucose levels. As the blood is circulated through the pancreas, elevated levels of glucose trigger the release of insulin. The circulating insulin binds with the receptors of its target cells, in this case skeletal muscle or liver cells, and the cell membrane becomes more permeable to glucose, basically more permeable to taking in the sugar, so it could use it for energy. Glucose then diffuses out of the bloodstream and into the cell. The net result is a drop of blood glucose levels. Thus, insulin causes cells in the liver, muscles, and fat tissue to take up glucose from the blood, storing it as glycogen in the liver and muscle. Now, glycogen. Glycogen is one of the two hormones secreted by the pancreas that regulate blood glucose levels. Its effect is opposite to that of insulin, as it functions to raise blood glucose levels by triggering the release of glycogen stores from the liver. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose, and when you have excess amounts of glucose within the bloodstream, and your cells don't need any more of that energy, all the stored energy then goes into your liver, and it is stored as glycogen. Okay? Hours after a meal, or as a result of a combination of normal metabolic processes and physical activity, the body will begin to exhibit lower blood glucose levels. The drop in circulating blood glucose levels triggers the release of glucagon from the pancreas. In contrast to insulin, glucagon has a much more specific effect, stimulating the liver to convert its glycogen stores back into glucose, which is then released into the bloodstream. Pretty cool, huh? Now its effect on exercise. Understanding the effects of exercise is helpful to understanding the interrelationship between insulin and glucagon. As activity levels increase, glucose uptake by the body's cells also increases. This is the result of an increased sensitivity in the cells to insulin. Thus, insulin levels will drop during physical activity. At the same time, glucagon secretion by the pancreas increases, thus helping maintain a steady supply of blood glucose. Now I'll go ahead and end it with that part. Part 2 will be the adrenal, pituitary, reproductive, and thyroid hormones.